This premium podcast episode is sponsored by Meeple City Games, bringing Vector Wars to Kickstarter in the month of October. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for October. It's kind of scary time. Is it scary time? We don't know. It's like the entire month has been taken over by Halloween, and some people like that very, very much, and some people don't like it at all. Just like some people don't like maths, and some people like basic maths, and then some people go into this kind of more exciting math, and some people get quite angry at maths, and they're talking about algebra and equations, and then even vectors, and some people get so angry about vectors they decide to have a war about them. So joining me today to talk about such a war from Meeple City Games, they're here to talk about Vector Wars, I have got Eli Mamane. So hello, Eli. How are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm good, thanks. I'm loving the intro, man. I could have sat through that all over again.
I'm not going to do it all over again.
No, fair enough.
No. It's all good. Thank you for joining us. We are here to talk about... Well, talk about your bad self, but obviously we're here to talk a little bit about Vector Wars as well. We've got to say hello to everybody who's out there. So hello everybody who's out here. The reason that we do this is quite simply because there's not enough podcasts out there about tabletop.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sad situation. I think we need to be pushing the boat a bit more. Us UK are leading the way. That's what's important.
It's just that's what we need to be doing. We're forging ahead, kind of getting ourselves out there and making sure the entire land is covered in tabletop podcasts, which is completely my right. The second reason that we do this is because it's time to talk a little bit about Kickstarter again, which is always fun. And me and Eli have spoken, and he says, "I want to come on," and I said, "Okay." Except we didn't do it in that voice. It was more polite because it was over Facebook, so you've got to kind of mind your manners when you're talking to somebody that you haven't spoken to before. But give it about 10 minutes and we'll be swearing back and forward like nobody's business, you can guarantee it.
For sure.
In terms... Why don't you start things off? Let's, before we talk about the pressed and printed trees stuff, things...
Are we going to have an ecological debate? Are we going to have an ecological debate about greenhouse gases? Because I'm on the wrong show.
Oh, no.
Thank God.
Well, no, you're about to, potentially get thousands of pieces manufactured in China.
Yeah,
and then shipped over
half plastic and half forests that I've deforested on the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally my fault, yeah.
You're kind of walking, it's almost like some kind of green trap.
Yeah.
It's like that, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah.
I'm on kind of, are you aware of the carbon footprint that your game's about to produce when it gets funded? Probably not. When you were growing up,
yeah,
did you have a game day with the family? I mean, was it something that you all sat around the table and you scrabbled some cardboard together and ended up fighting and shouting, and then there was kind of scowling over the turkey and stuff like that?
So at the cost of stopping all the people who hate Jews from buying my board games, I'm Jewish, and one of the things is that on a Saturday, we don't really do anything other than chill out with the family. It's it's the day of rest, and it's a family day. Yes. And board games was the thing to do. So yes, every week on a Saturday we had a family board game day. And it's only now I look back at why my parents chose the games that they did, and I'm very disappointed in them, frankly. But you had all the usual hereditary shenanigans, Scrabble, Risk, Monopoly, Cluedo, that kind of junk.
It's not junk. It's not junk. I bet you've got memories. I bet you can remember And everybody remembers, the first time that you managed to land on Park Lane and claim both those properties. People remember getting all the utilities. People remember finally beating that sibling into submission and watching them cry as they landed on Old Kent Road where you had all 15 hotels and you just robbed them for all their money.
So I detest that. I detest that game so much. I'm so sorry.
I don't know why it's a stable. Look, if it was so bad, they wouldn't keep making it.
You know what it is I think that one of the things I don't like about it is it's indicative of the patience of the population to learn rules for a game. Because what are the rules of that game? The rules of that game are roll a dice, roll a move, and buy some stuff. And to be honest with you, I think my issue is with Monopoly is that the mechanisms inside that game weren't particularly well thought out. I mean, they may have been ingenious for the time, right? It's all relative to the time that you're in, right? So, frankly, roll and move was probably like a big deal. And having the opportunity to buy something in a game was probably a big deal as well. Although I remember a game called Careers that we used to play that was probably as old as Monopoly. I don't know if you know that game, but you used to have to collect hearts and stars and money, and you choose by going through different careers in life. You could become an astronaut or a Hollywood star or whatever, and you would get different resources. They weren't resources because you couldn't spend them, but victory conditions, if you like, that you could achieve. They weren't victory points even. It was like it's a weird. It was a weird situation. You'd get certain stuff like similar to Scythe with the stars in Scythe. It always reminds me of Careers. And when you achieved a certain number of stars, it was an end game condition. So it was good. Better than Monopoly.
Better than Monopoly. Did you stay in the kind of the cardboard stuff, or did you kind of drift? Did you kind of drift away? Did you then go to like college, university, kind of stuff like that? Or did you go get a job?
No, there was a natural progression to computer games, obviously. I mean, I was like, I grew up with the Amiga 500 and I had an Atari 4-bit and 8-bit. And like I went through the generation of going through computer games, Commodore 64. Gosh, it was incredible, to be honest. Like, when the NES came out and the SNES came out and the Mega Drive came out, those things were mind-blowing. And they did pull me away from board games for quite a while because it was such a new experience and it took things to a different level. I was like a Southeast England champion of GoldenEye, which was on the N64, the Nintendo 64.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. I played. My dad came to watch me in central London. Live. I don't know if you remember, there used to be a thing called Live 95. It was like named after the year Live 96, Live 97.
Yeah.
So then I was in a tournament for 2 games there. One was Virtual Fighter and the other one was GoldenEye. And so I did.
In terms of, so was it like kind of the death matches you were talking about? Kind of like you were going in with 4 other players, and then it was whoever was.
Yeah, that's right. So what would happen is that we were in a tournament, so you'd get people that had won local tournaments in the area turn up on the day, and we were just competing in a standard tournament. It's a 4. You had 4 people on the screen at the same time, and you were one of them, and the other 3 were sitting right next to you. For a bit of a different experience to playing online, and you could see where people were by looking at their screen. It was different. You can't do that anymore. Was there a controversy over the odd? I mean, what was your view on the old Odd Job character kind of selection? It was banned. It was banned from tournament. You can play Odd Job. And he was short, and he had there was some Odd Job glitches as well. It wasn't just the fact he was short. So they banned him from tournament play. You couldn't play Odd Job. But
that was strange because I remember people kind of going, no, don't play Odd Job because you're cheating. And it's like, how can you be cheating? It's like, well, because he's shorter, and that was the only thing I knew. I didn't know about the kind of the glitches that kind of went on.
But there were. But the biggest issue was obviously the auto aim. There was a slight auto aim in the game, so the crosshead would just move gently towards the person you were trying to aim at, and because he was shorter, it would take a little bit longer to get there. So they'd always have an advantage on you. Everyone was approximately the same size as other than Odd Job and Jaws. I think Jaws was really tall in the game. But you got to remember that when you played those games, you would be watching your screen and other people's screens to work out what they're doing. Right? You can't do that on the internet, right? You're just looking at your own screen. You'd never know where someone else is.
Exactly.
It was a completely different kind of deathmatch game. Completely. I mean, in fact, there was a follow up to GoldenEye called Perfect Dark, and one of the
Yes, I remember Perfect Dark as well. I remember the RAM pack, or was it the ROM pack that they had that you plugged into the front?
That's right, ROM
the
pack.
N64.
Increased the memory of the N64 so you could play the game. And one of the guns you had was called a Farsight, from what I remember, and you could look through walls to find people and shoot them through the wall. It's super broken, but basically, if you knew where people were, then it was much easier to do that. If you were playing it online, it would be a completely different experience. But anyway, that's part of my history. It was at the same time while I was playing Magic, so I had two loves in those days, which was computer games and Magic the Gathering. I was playing in Elephant and Castle, where the major qualification for UK champs would be. It was quite a big deal. And then I had one entry that I made that was at the Barbican Centre, where it was like the Pro Tour qualified.
How, in terms of the Nintendo 6, going back to that quickly, how far did you get in the tournament? Did you get through to the finals then, or did you get knocked out?
Yeah, so I got through quite a long way into the tournament, and it's a funny story, actually, that there was this guy because basically after you lost, you didn't just lose, you'd go into like a loser's bracket.
Yeah.
And the guy who came through on loser's bracket, who I beat to put into loser's bracket, actually knocked me out. Out of...
What?
Yeah. Out of the winner's bracket later on in the game. I'd already been knocked out of winners, and then I got knocked out. I got knocked out from losers by this guy. So, and I was gloating and being a complete dickhead, basically. I was 15 years old, so...
Oh, right, okay. That's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was completely gloating, and he punished me for it. First lesson of the life, really.
What do you think about these guys when you see, like, the Fortnite stuff, and their guys are, like, going home with, like, $3 million prize money? You're sitting there going, damn, I was...
Do you know what I won?
I was 20 years too early.
I won a jacket and a pair of glasses. I think
I see nowadays this guy's like 16 years old with $3 million and the kind of like prize money. I'm just going, damn, I'm in the wrong job.
Yeah, and it's a different time. Yeah, there was none of that back then. I remember when Major League Gaming, MLG came out, and I used to love Smash Brothers. I don't know if you know Smash Brothers at all.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And I still follow Smash Brothers. Like, I've been following it ever since. But I used to watch what they used to call the King of Smash play. And there was quite a few amazing Smash guys back in those days. One's name's Ozun, I think. Anyway, I used to watch them quite a lot. As soon as the internet became a thing, really. And then afterwards, because you couldn't see the games, you'd get little, tiny snippets of the games, but mostly you'd read about them. And then later on, it just exploded, and I was watching the financial prizes rise and rise and rise when Major League Gaming came out. They started to win actual real money, thousands of dollars. I was like, oh god damn it! And I'd missed my time. My time had already gone.
You're not tempted to ever kind of jump into Evo or anything like that? You mentioned Virtual Fighter. Were you not? Was Street Fighter kind of not your bag, or
I was no? By the time that all happened, Street Fighter 2 was my bag. Like, I played a lot of Street Fighter 2 Turbo was a big deal for me on the SNES. Mm-hmm. But to be honest with you, again, I got old and I got married and I had kids and life moved on. I had a degree. I got a degree in theoretical physics, so things moved on. I'd lost interest. I've always played computer games. I've never stopped. Even now, I play Overwatch and I play all sorts of Ring of Elysium, and I play lots of computer games. And I'm 37, so I've never really grown up out of it, to be honest.
I can't even begin to kind of drag you on that, because last night I was still going through Scholar of the First Sin, Dark Souls 2. I was just doing my 5th rerun of that game kind of thing.
I like Dark Souls, yeah. It's part. Well, I'm the generation. I'm the computer generation. You know, I'm the. You know, I mean, it belongs to my generation. We grew up in the 80s. You know, first time you started to see computer generated stuff on the screen. I remember watching Independence Day and like it blowing my mind when I came out of the cinema. It was very Americanized, but the fact that, you know, that they generated this kind of like stuff on the screen, it was just unheard of. Like I remember just that feeling after I'd watched it. It was just such a mind-blowing event. But for me, like Back to the Future, it's my favorite movie of all time, Back to the Future 1. And I remember watching it in the 80s. I was born after it came out in the cinema, sadly. So I wasn't born after it came out in the cinema. I'd come out of the cinema and I was too young at the time to have gone to watch it. I was like a baby. So I watched it when I was like 6-7 years old, and mind blown, really. It blew my mind, and it's influenced my entire life, that movie, I would say. So
it was on the telly, it was on the TV just the other weekend there, and I taped it because my 6-year-old was watching it with me because he's kind of into that. And then it was like there's a couple of questionable scenes where you're kind of like, you can't kind of watch this kind of thing, you know. But it was still such a good movie for the time, and it holds up so well as well. Just the timing, the comedy, the effects and everything. Like, there's very, very few kind of technical effects in it, but they just hold up kind of so well. And it's just like, you know what, I could get to the end of that film and I could just rewind that film and just start watching it again, because it's like one of those films that you can pick up.
It's so funny. You're showing your age because you're using the word rewind. Like, that's a VHS comment, right? We don't rewind anything anymore. You know that. And it's so funny it's so funny that some people use that. I would use that, right? I would say, I could rewind it straight back again.
I could just rewind it and start watching it again. But that's what you did at the time.
That's right.
I don't know. You would have been in the age where you rented out videotapes as well, and then what you would have done is you would have got the videotape on like the on the Saturday night or something like that, you know, and then you would have watched it, and then you would have. What we used to do is we used to get the videotape out, and then we used to watch it at night, get a pizza or some kind of easy to make food, and then the next morning we would wake up, and you'd try and make sure to remember you rewound the tape of the previous night, so you didn't have to sit there, because you were like 9 or 10 years old, or you were 12 years old. You didn't have the patience to kind of wait. You're just hoping you could rewind it back to the beginning or whatever, so you could just watch it kind of straight over. Then you'd have to take it back to the video store, and that would kind of like it was kind of like, I don't know nowadays, trying to explain that to my kids. That's how it kind of worked, and they're just like, what? So you paid basically £7 to rent a film. It's like, well, yeah, especially if it was just out.
Yeah, if it just come out, yeah.
And you didn't own it. No, we had it for like an entire weekend. Basically,
the thing is, I don't think that's changed. I don't think that's changed. You go on Sky and you want to like order a film, you have the choice to buy it or rent the movie.
Oh, I suppose.
And you got like a 3-day like limit for the movie. I don't think that's changed much, to be honest. And you know, with the way that like Netflix works as well, right? As long as you're subscribed, you technically can rent it's a technicality, but you technically rent it because you never actually own it, do you? If you stop your subscription, you don't. So I'm not convinced that that's really changed per se. Like, the business model was the same, but it just was a whole different experience. Like, I remember watching, going to a friend's house and them having a movie, and that was their birthday party. Like, it was a big deal. Like, you'd go around and we watched Weird Science. It was one of the.
Wow,
I love that film. Right? We'd watch Weird Science, and to be fair, actually, all of those movies, the Brat Pack movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Pretty in Pink, what was the other ones? A Breakfast Club, of course, right? So all that was my generation, right? So I'm like literally. I just reminisce about all of those movies like they were such a big deal to me. Whereas my kids just don't understand it at all yet. They're not old enough. They will be. My oldest is only 8. So
it was the trailers. That was the thing on the VHS. It was getting the trailers. You would sit there and you go like, "Well, what's on?" It wasn't always. It was always a surprise. Yeah, because movie news was so kind of like far behind. So you did your physics, yeah, and then you went obviously out and got yourself a job. And when did you start slipping back into the cardboard realm then?
So don't forget that was still kind of happening on a Saturday. Like, it was always in the background. But the reality is that it was the same generic board games, so they didn't really mean anything to me. I played county chess, so like chess was a big deal for a period of my life. I remember that being like something that I was involved in. I was in the Telegraph chess championships with my school. We did quite well. We had a guy called Lawrence Trent, who's now an international master of chess. He was board 1 and I was board 3. So there were 6 boards, and so, you know, I remember these people. Like, it was a big deal. So board games has always been part of my life, but it's been very much in the background. Magic, like I said, MTG, Magic the Gathering, was not in the background. It was one of my 2 loves, which is why I own a lot of the. I joined Magic the Gathering in what we call revised, alpha, beta, and then like there was unlimited and revised. Yeah. I joined just then. Okay, now I couldn't really afford to buy much of the cards. I used to collect my pocket money, and I'd go down to a shop which no longer exists anymore called Destiny Games, and I'd go and buy a packet of Magic the Gathering, and then I'd just get obliterated by the people that work down there again and again and again and again. I like, but what's happened is obviously now I've got the cards still, right? And then I looked at the prices for them, and I'm like, what the hell's gone on? Like, the prices for these cards is stupid. Like I tried to get back into it about 4 or 5 years ago when Commander was a big deal. We always had like EDH, Elder something Head Dragon or whatever it was called. Something I can't remember. Like, it was, we already had a version of what they have now, which they call Commander. I like started to play again more recently, but I really didn't like the new format. It's been a struggle, and then I've started playing it online again, and I don't know, I can't get it out my system. Magic, it's just been one of those things. I don't even enjoy the game, to be honest. But it's in my blood. You know, it's my entire childhood. I think I spent a lot of time reminiscing about playing Magic, building decks.
Would you sell the collection then? I mean, would there be a point where you just said like, no, this is enough, I'm just going to kind of get rid of it? Or are you just kind of like, are you holding it on because more of the memories
do you know what?
Than the financial value type of thing?
Do you know what? I could not give 2 hoots about the financial value. I let my kids play with them, and if anyone saw what they're playing with, they would literally have a meltdown. These cards like are hundreds of pounds, and I let them just, like, you know, put them out, tap them, like, you know, like play them. I've taught my kids how to play Magic. I'll sit there and watch them because one of them's only 4 years old. They're pretty bright kids, but they actually can understand how it works. So they basically play with them, but and I really don't care. Like, what will happen is they'll slowly get damaged over time, and then they'll probably end up in a bin somewhere. I just don't care at all. I could, like, I've had so many people like comment to me out of my friends and like, why don't you sell them, then buy a whole load of commons for like next to nothing, and then just and I say to them this, those aren't the cards I played with. These are the cards I played with. These are the cards that I want my kids to play with because they're like, it's a heritage. Like, you know, this was what I grew up on. I want them to grow up on the same thing. When the game was good, like, that's going to be another unpopular opinion, but when the game was actually balanced and they hadn't had this power creep that completely destroyed the game from the inside out. There were things that needed fixing, actually, to be fair, but I've never stopped playing card games as well. That's always been important to me. So the last, I don't know, 8 years of my life, I was playing Netrunner. Do you know Netrunner at all?
No, I've never ever heard of Net. Of course, I've heard of Netrunner.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what. So
I am very, very old. I'm very, very good at passing off that I have knowledge of stuff. Yeah, I mean, Netrunner was really funny that it kind of appeared in a huge fanfare, burned very, very brightly for a reasonably short period of time compared to Magic.
Yeah.
And then they just turned around one day and went, right, that's it. Game over. And it seems to have, it's kind of staying value just hasn't stayed. I know people that are playing Netrunner like religiously, and I know people that still go out and want to play it kind of now and again and stuff like that. But as far as, you know, the club I go to and stuff like that, it's unfortunately it's been dead for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, Fantasy Flight killed the game before the game died because of Wizards, right? I mean, and I say this as someone who's friends with a guy called Mintren, who's the owner of Jinteki, which is a website where you can play the game online, and has influenced. He was the world number 2. And has influenced his choice of decks to compete with. Like I was coming up with ideas for deck building for him, and you can all look that up online and find the credits and whatnot. But I was involved at a pretty high level of the game. Never really wanting to go and take it up any more seriously than that. But I was like very much playing, like you were saying, religiously the game. Really enjoyed it, and then they killed the game from inside out because it's hard to explain unless people understand the game. But one of the things I love about the game, in fact, it's why it happens in Vector Wars. It's something, there are mechanics from games that I've taken over my life that I've enjoyed, and it's good that you're asking me these questions, because when someone asks me, so how did Vector Wars come about? It's a very difficult question because there's lots of different games that have taken pieces from, and I'll come back to one of them because you've already kind of asked me about it earlier. But in Netrunner, you play with ice face down. These are like protective cards that stop someone coming in and taking very important victory point agendas. It's like a mystery as to what they're going to find when they go up against them. And so they created this situation where you no longer needed ice. You no longer needed these barriers. You could just create lots and lots of different fake shells and stop them getting into those by making them pay a lot of money. And it destroyed the game. It made it the most boring game ever. And it was forcing the meta to play very particular cards, and that's not what it was about. The whole enjoyment of Netrunner is the surprise. Like, you could win any minute. You could win in the first 3 turns of the game. It's like theoretically possible. You run the library. It's not called a library in Netrunner, but you run basically the deck of cards. And if you hit agendas 3 times in a row and you got enough points, then you'd win the game. And that was the whole point. It was like very random, but not random. Like, it was very strategical in the choice of play. And so they killed the game before. I'd already stopped playing before before Fantasy Flight said that they'd lost the license. And I think that a lot of their Netrunner fans had also gone. I mean, I don't know if you know Shut Up and Sit Down, but they have there's a guy on there who's a massive Netrunner fan. He's actually had it tattooed to his arm, I noticed, the link sign. And he stopped playing as well. And I think we'd stopped playing about the same time, and I've never heard his views or thoughts on it, but he publicly stopped playing. I'm a nobody. And I was like, there must be something going on here in a wider community than just I'm not the only one who's noticing this, basically. So yeah, it died. It killed. I think Fantasy Flight killed the game before Wizards took the license back, to be honest.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, I do.
Do you miss having a similar game like that? Because I've seen people graduate onto other things like Legends of the Five Rings.
Yeah, I tried. I tried Game of Thrones. I tried Legends of the Five Rings. I tried quite a few other games, and nothing really matches it. More recently, played quite a bit of Keyforge, and they're all like Garfield games. Like I can't sit with Keyforge. I don't know why. It's okay. I enjoy it. I never really bought into it. I've won a few games in a local shop, but it didn't bring me much joy. So I don't know. It might be that I can't until there's something that needs to be a magic recipe of the cards before I jump in on it. But I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. So it's something that I've discussed with quite a lot of friends who are board game designers who are also very much into that. Actually Star Realms. I'm a massive Star Realms fan. If you probably search up online, you'll find pictures of me winning store champs and stuff at Star Realms. Love that game. Love that card game. I've got mats and stuff that I've won. I really, really enjoyed it.
Did you ever play it online through the online?
Oh, on the app, yeah, I played on the app and stuff, but it's not the same as playing in person. I like that's another thing. Like I play Magic online, but these things never feel the same. You don't get to say anything. When you play that card and you look at the opponent's face and you just have that moment of do they have a counterspell? Like it's you can't. It's not the same. You're not. It's like playing poker online. I mean, what is that? It's just. How can you tell if someone's bluffing when you're online? You're just guessing statistically, whatever. It's not the same. You play the person, I think that's one of the things with board games. People need to understand that you don't just play the game, you play the person. And if you're no longer playing the person, then it's just an automated, statistical number system, which loses half the joy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've written reviews where the most recent review I kind of re-released for Wildlands, and I said that they kind of I played it 2-player and had an absolute blast, and then being totally excited about playing it again, I said okay to my 4-player, I set up a 4-player game with my friends and said this is an amazing game, you can play it, and they kind of didn't get it, and they kind of walked away kind of wanting more and expecting something kind of a little bit more complicated, and they kind of walked away from it going, yeah, okay, it's fine. And I was going to go, no, this is absolutely really, really good fun, really, really good, amazing and stuff like that. And I think, yeah, it depends entirely on sometimes the people that you're playing with and if they're willing to go back and forward with a bit of banter. And yeah, sometimes in Star Realms, because I've played Star Realms quite a lot. In fact, we played Star Realms so much that we ended up kind of moving away from it.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Because once you get to a point, you're kind of like, well, I know I'm going to do this. I know. There's 7 or 8 key cards in the base deck that everybody has to go for, and once you've got that, then you're pretty much, you're pretty much kind of home free.
I love the needle, the stealth needle. That card is so broken. Yeah, it's just one of those key cards, and there's only one of them in the original set. So, but you know what? When you play people who know how to play that game, which is what you do when you go to tournaments, right? Then it makes you start to try and think about alternate ways to beat your opponent, and if there are other mechanisms than just buying the same cards over and over again. And I think that again, that you're going to find out that all of this stuff, all these thoughts that I've had, brings us back to why Vector Wars came about. And the last one, you've just reminded me, the last one was Final Fantasy VII. So I don't know if you ever played Final Fantasy VII, but specifically Final Fantasy VIII. There was a card game in it called Triple Triad.
Triple Triad, yeah.
So one of the things about Vector Wars, you'll notice that there are 4 numbers, one on each side of the card, and it's literally the mechanism from Triple Triad. I love that card game. It was so simple, and it was well put together inside a much bigger, obviously, role-playing style game that Squaresoft do for Final Fantasy VIII.
I never understood why there was never some kind of commercial release with that, and I've never understood why nobody's ever kind of gone back. I've seen there was, for the longest time, there was almost like a bootleg Android version which they'd taken all the cards, and as soon as Square Enix or Squeenix or whatever they're called got an eye to that, they were like, no, off. And I've always wondered why, a game like that, because I used to spend I remember spending hours just going and finding somewhere to play and just playing it until we couldn't be bothered kind of playing it anymore, and then just going back the next night and playing it. I think it got to the point where
you forgot the game. We forgot to play the game.
The actual,
the same as me.
There's like a 70-hour role-playing game about it.
Totally, I understand that, and so I wanted to bring Triple Triad back alive, right? Because game mechanisms, for people that don't know, game mechanisms are not copyrightable. You can take rolling dice, like it would have been gone with Monopoly, so they can't copyright a game mechanism. And one of the mechanisms that you'll see in Vector Wars is a Triple Triad style mechanism that exists in the game. It's part of the combat mechanism, and so it's brought it back to life in some way. And if you are a Final Fantasy kind of fan, and you loved Triple Triad, then this is your only real opportunity in an actual board game to take part in that again when the Kickstarter comes out. I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Where'd you get the idea from? I mean, what made you decide to sit down and put something together? Was it the kind of the apathy because
no, it wasn't.
Netrunner was disappearing, or was there anything you said, well, actually this is my turn, I'm going to put something kind of out there?
No, it's not like that actually. What happened was, I mean, there's probably a small element subconsciously about that, but not actively. I'm a physics teacher. I've got a lot of knowledge of mathematics. I've got a high end knowledge of mathematics and physics, and I naturally started to, I once I started to investigate. So this comes as part of an answer to a previous question you asked me about. When did I slowly come back into board games, right? And the answer to that is once I decided to stop playing Magic, and once I decided to investigate other board games, which happened basically after university. I became a stockbroker, and then I finished with that and wanted to become a teacher. And when I became a teacher, I had a bit more time in the holidays and whatnot. And I really wanted to investigate what else was out there. And I went to this phenomenal shop, my local Finchley shop called Leisure Games. Really fabulous community in there, great people. It's like legendary, this shop in the UK, honestly. And they just slowly sucked me into like all the different board games that were out, and I started to see the diversity. Pandemic was one of the first gateway games I tried. And I really enjoyed Pandemic, to be honest. I really, really liked it as one of the first games that I played. And then I started to see some worker placement. It's like the same thing that everyone, I think it's the same. Anyone who's got into board games has gone through the same, Forgotten Realms style worker placement game. It's one of those things. So you go through the same kind of Stone Age and Carcassonne and Catan, and I hate all of those games, by the way, now, quite a lot. I will not play them if someone asks me to play them, but not because they're bad games, but because I've just played them too much. I've just had enough. And it was at that point, I think, once I started to head into the midweight games, I started to understand the mathematics behind some of the games. I started to understand some of the simulation modeling that had taken place behind the games. I could see the mathematics behind what the value of the resources were. Some of them are more overt than others. So if you play, not From Sand to Sea, what was the first one called? Spice Road. You could literally take the number 4, make it brown, the number 3, make it green, the number 2, make it red, and the number 1, and make it yellow, and start adding up those values and have a look at the cards and decide whether the value of the card that you're receiving is more efficient than the card that you're. So you'd hate playing me probably. I don't know what kind of game you're like, but if you can't stand, like a lot of people can't stand the mathematicians that are working out whether they're playing the most efficient move, right? I'm sitting there going, this is slightly more efficient than that one. Once I started to play those kind of games, Splendor, I started to see that there is obviously a quite simple mathematical set behind it. And then I thought to myself, do you know what? After I'd gone through that there was better things that could be done. There's a lot more that can be achieved. Yeah. I feel like we've come to a static element in board games where people are stuck with Euro, worker placement, tile placement, Ameritrash. I feel like, how many worker placement games can you have? I go on Kickstarter, and there's another great worker placement game. I just looked at Godspeed, actually. I don't want to talk too much about other people's stuff, but I looked at Godspeed. It looks fabulous, right? Good for them. It looks great. And then I'm like, do I want to get it? I'm like, no, because I have 10 amazing or 12 amazing worker placement games. What am I going to do when I go to my cupboard? I'm not playing the games that I already want to be playing. I'm going to have another one that I'm not going to play and get to stare at because I've got, 12 other good worker placement games. So it's become a real competition for a particular style of game, whether it's resource management or whatever it is.
I think it gets more difficult as time goes on because I think we're at the point where there's games that have issues and they don't come until you get the 10th or the 15th playthrough where people go, oh, right, this is actually, if you could play this card, this is actually can be fairly broken kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of few and far between. I think there's quite a lot. The majority of games have been playtested, hundreds and hundreds of times. I find it actually hilarious that one of the questions I'll always ask people is, oh yeah, how many kind of playtesting sessions did you go through? And they'll go, oh well, went to kind of like the last kind of 3-4 major cons, kind of got was down at like 3 or 4 different clubs in the area, must have gone through about 200 or 300 kind of playtests in total.
Yeah.
And the irony of the situation is that in the way the board game kind of hobby seems to be going is that the person that actually ends up taking taking advantage of your Kickstarter and having it delivered, they're probably lucky if they'll maybe get it to the table 3 or 4 times.
Isn't that sad? Don't you think that's sad?
Because 70 or 80 other games.
There's so many layers of strategy to some of the games, right? That you just play it once or twice and you're not really even touching the strategy. It's like almost a learning game. And, I feel like, I'm to blame just like everyone else. I've got like a couple of 100 games, right? And, if you think about it, I've got a group that comes once a week. If I'm lucky, I might get a second time where I go to like the local cafe. How many games can you play a year? 50? 200? You haven't even gone through half your collection maybe once. Like even if you've got a modest collection of 100 games, like I say modest, it's a lot, right? But you're still only going to maybe play each of those games once. And if you don't like those games and you don't want to play them again, then they shouldn't be in your collection anyway. You should have sold them on. Move on to someone else who's going to want them, right? So I'm assuming that the collections that people have, and I see vast collections, big collections everywhere, but how many times are you playing those games? And there are some games that I absolutely love. So for example, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Anachrony, right? I love Anachrony. Phenomenal game. Has loads of expansions. Not touched any of the modules so far because I don't even understand. I don't think I've got really through the tactics and the strategy of the basic core set. And how many times have I had the chance to play that game? Maybe 4. I'm desperate to get it to the table again. But there's so many other games that are there to like try out. I got Dynagenics. That's the last worker placement game I bought, and I don't think And I got all this stuff recently on the Kickstarter. I bought all the expansion stuff for it again. And I think I'm going to ban myself from buying any more worker placement games, even if they're incredible, because...
Have you not had a chance to play it?
Not had a chance to play it. I've had it sitting there for now 6 to 8 months.
I've played it 3 times.
What did you think of it?
It's really good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the kind of the immediacy of it, and it is one of these... It is a typical worker placement game where all you're doing is you're placing your guys, you're getting your resources, but the way it kind of works and interacts off things, it was fun, and the people that played it had a kind of a fun time, and especially there's the kind of the building parks kind of scenario, and it was compared an awful lot to Dinosaur Island.
I played Dinosaur Island. I played that quite a bit.
There are kind of two different beasts.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a playthrough of Dynagenics, so I know what the game mechanisms look like. And I've played Dinosaur Island a lot because I've got a friend who owns it. We try not to both like if I've got a group, we try not to all own the same game because what's the point, right? So he owns my friend. He owns Dinosaur Island, and I've played Dinosaur Island a good few times now, and I really like that game a lot. I find it a little bit on the clunky side because of the number of phases that you have to go through. I find it a little on the clunky side, but very clever, well put together, probably play tested 1 billion time game. And I was just like, I wouldn't buy this because although I really liked it, I have 8 or 9 better worker placement games, and I haven't played Dynagenics yet. But if I feel like it's never going to get back to the table, I will just sell it on. I will move it on. Someone else is going to love it, I'm sure. And if I don't feel like I'm going to want to rotate it through with the other 9 worker placement games that I've got, then I'm not going to bother. And my favourite worker placement game is not Anachrony. It's actually Champions of Midgard. That is my favourite worker placement game.
I've heard some good things. I've heard some really good things about Champions of Midgard. I never had the chance
with the expansions. It has to be with the expansions. Otherwise, it's just pretty mediocre.
Mm-hmm. So, Vector Wars. Let's give me the skinny and the rundown on Vector Wars, because you've mentioned there's a couple of trigger things that's got me going. I need to really see this game. And that is the whole triple triad thing, first of all, because that gets a big tick in my box. If you just said, I'm going to just give you a deck of triple triad, I'd be like, okay, that's brilliant. I will back it for you.
Look, it's hard to explain in one sentence, okay? If you force me, which is what the internet does, because no one's got the patience to actually listen to what the game is, because it doesn't fit in any one particular genre, okay? But if you force me, then I'll tell you that it's a 2-player area combat tactics game. That's what I would tell you if you forced me to do it in a sentence. But being that I've got a little bit longer to explain it, I'm going to tell you that it's an asymmetric resource management, area domination, tactical combat game with hidden movement. And so that's adding a whole load of mechanisms together. So I'll tell you where each of the mechanisms that you'll recognize similar to. So it has a marketplace, just like Star Realms, which I absolutely adore. But the marketplace, it's not a deck builder. You start with all 9 characters in your hand. And if you bought something from the market, it'd go directly into your hand, which you could play straight away. There is no deck. So you can play any of your 9 characters anytime you like, right? And the 9 characters that you have all have what we call flip abilities. You play them face down, just like Netrunner, where you get that surprise element. And playing them face down into the grid, which is a 3x3 grid, styled with a Tron-style look, because one of my favorite movies from the 80s. And you play them face down, and you are, at first, you're going to want to just focus on the synergistic behavior of the cards that you have. And the first time that you play Vector Wars, and this game's been play tested like nearly 1,000 times probably at this point. And the first thing I see that people do is they want to just play the cards that they've got. But then they're ignoring the whole point, which is that each card has 4 numbers, and that dictates the strength of each side of the card. And so playing it in a particular area on the board is going to be stronger or weaker depending on where you play it. There are 3 different strengths of flip abilities in your hand, and you start with 5 credits. So you have money. When you kill people, you get money and victory points, and the game is winning won by victory points, not by a domination of area on the boards, which is why it's not quite accurate when I say it's like a 2-player tactics area domination game, because the area doesn't mean anything. The only way the area would mean everything is if you locked out your opponent by having all 9 of your cards on the grid. Then you would just call a lockout and you automatically win the game, irrespective of whether you're winning or losing by victory points.
All right, okay.
So you've got these flip abilities. They're asymmetric. They're not the same flip abilities. There's 4 different factions in the game that come free with the core set, and they play very, very differently. Some of them are strong at combat. That's what they do. They're just very good at combat. Others make money, which allows you to buy cards from the marketplace. One important rule is that the credits are actually worth a victory point at the end of the game. So when you spend your money on cards from the marketplace, you're actually reducing the number of victory points that you have. So there's a risk-reward management that you're having to deal with all the time, because the marketplace cards are very powerful, and they will give you an advantage. They're more powerful than the flip abilities that people have. On top of that, you have loads of actions. So it's action selection. Every player takes just 1 action per turn, and there are some free actions that you can choose to bolt on. Yeah. But it's an action selection choice. And putting your card down into the grid isn't a choice in action. But there's stuff that starts on the grid. There's money on the grid. There's shield cubes on the grid, which would, if you were to place them on your card, would allow you to lose a combat without dying. There's a movement card. There's what we call a gravity well token, which allows you to move your opponent or yourself around the grid to a free adjacent space. So there's lots of stuff going on there. So after the first time someone plays, they're going to just be focusing on their cards, because it's hard to cope with. The second time someone plays, they're going to notice the marketplace, because that's what happens. That's what tends to happen. They go, why didn't I think about the marketplace? I should have taken this. I could have put this in, blah, blah, blah. The third time they play the game, they're going to remember the cards that their opponent had and what they did. So they're going to start to play the shell game, this kind of, I'm playing this, I'm pretending to play this strong card here, but it's not actually the card he thinks I'm going to play kind of game. And so what happens is this game has multiple layers of depth to it. And every time you play it, you're going to see layers and layers of strategy that just bubble to the surface, which is going to give you the advantage. And the beauty, I think what I love about this game the most is I spent 3 months on the mathematics checking the balance, making sure that the balance that sits the mathematics that sits underneath the tapestry that holds the DNA of the game together is about as balanced as you can get. So really and truly, it comes down to the skill of your opponent and a tiny bit of luck, because you rolled a dice for combat, but it can be mitigated quite a lot. That gives you that gives you the best rounding I can do in the shortest period of time.
It's a reasonable attempt. I think we'll go to the judges and we'll see what score they'll give you out of 10. You sound like you got the games nailed in terms of playtesting, mathematics.
Yeah.
What have you found? I mean, this is the second time that you've been to Kickstarter.
That's right, yeah.
With this project.
Yeah, that's right.
How it do? Did it take you by surprise the first time? Were you kind of like, yes, here we go, and then you're just like, damn, this isn't working out how we want it to work out. Did it take you by surprise when you first jumped onto Kickstarter?
I've been taken by surprise by the apathy, by people. I can scream up and down, jump up and down about how good the game is, but no one's going to be interested because I'm the designer. So every designer thinks their game's amazing, right? And so, at the time I knew that, but I thought that when people had an opportunity to look at it, play it, see it, that they would be excited by it. And I think I didn't do enough of a job the first time to engage the community as a whole. I just thought people would look at the mechanisms, they'd see that this is something very different to what they've experienced before. There's no game like it on the market. It's a 2-player board game. So a lot of people said to me, why don't you just get rid of the board? What do you need the board for? Just get rid of the board. And I was like, because it just doesn't work without the board. We've tried it. We tried it in game testing. It just is very difficult to follow because there are dice placements around the cards to a maximum of 3. There's movement. It's very, very hard. You just can't do it. So I asked the question: how many 2-player board games are there actually out there? And there aren't that many. There are a few, but there aren't that many. And so I thought, do you know what? It's different. People are going to really want to jump on board because this is got an interesting IP and it's different. And I was wrong. I was really, really wrong. That is not what it's about. I need to sell people on the idea. I need to offer them significantly more than what I originally understood from the Kickstarter. In fact, I would say I was quite ignorant, to be honest. And I've been humbled by the entire process of the first round. Because they're cutthroat, the people that invest in Kickstarter.
I think Kickstarter's strange because if you go with a 2-player game, people ask where the 3 and 4-player and 5-player expansions are, or they ask where the solo player mode is.
Yeah,
it's like one of these things. It's like I'm presenting this, but you see it all the time. It's like people come on with standees. Where's the miniatures?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? People come on with this. Where's the stretch? I mean, Moonrakers that went and did almost over $400,000
with no stretch
didn't have
goals.
Any stretch.
Yeah,
no stretch goals.
Yeah,
no stretch goals. And it's like people are going, but what about the stretch goals? It's like, well, we're not doing this for stretch, and people couldn't grasp it. They were like tearing their hair out. They were, banging their heads against the computer screen. They were just like, there was entire. Just single forum posts on Reddit just saying no stretch goals with no reference to Moonrakers whatsoever. People just blew their minds to do that. And I think that there's a sense of I think the Kickstarter itself has moved away from a kind of a sense of people wanting to help other people achieve things, and sometimes there's a borderline sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
So if somebody jumps onto Kickstarter and if they don't see what they want, they feel that they know they're a backer and they know that they have a power by pledging money to you, and therefore they have the right to. It used to be a case they would make suggestions, and sometimes some people are quite upfront and say, well, why aren't you doing this? I think you should do this.
Everyone I've ever met want to talk about Kickstarter talks about it like that they're correct and that there is no other opinion about Kickstarter. And so whatever choices I've made over the time, I remember when it failed the first time, and it didn't fail. So let me explain, let me put this in context. 5 massive Kickstarters came out at the same time. And we just got lost in the ether, right? The ether fields actually was one of them. So literally the ether fields of the game. I think Dice Throne came out at the time as well. There were just like some multi-million pound Kickstarters, and also what's happened to Kickstarters. It's really sad actually, because it used to be a place to help people who've got a great idea get funded. But the big businesses have come in and just taken over, and they take over everywhere. Like I struggle to do PR. I'm one man, by the way. I've created everything other than the artwork. I have a great artist, Hal Laren. He's just incredible, right? I don't know if you've seen the artwork for it, but this guy is just like, and I've known him from I've got a massive comic book fan. I used to work in interviewing famous people that wrote comic books and stuff, and I met him over the years, and as soon as I was ready to make a board game and I wanted an artist, I said to him, I want you, buddy. I know what you can do. You're the right man for this job. And he's just phenomenal. Yeah. But the thing is, right, is that you go to Kickstarter and you're trying to PR, right? You're trying to get people to hear about this board game. And I really want to come back, by the way, to your solo player point as well at some point. So I'm trying to remind myself here. But you really want to get people to have a look. And everyone's charging serious sums of money, especially the Americans, right? You want to get it previewed, £600, right? Think about it. I've got the prototype has cost me a few £100. I think the proto from China cost me $400 or $500. The one I built myself cost me around 150 each, right? So if I want to send them a proto, then I'm going to have to pay. Let's say I'd send one of the cheap ones that I made 150, 200 quid. The cost to send it, another 100 quid. It's gone because I'm not going to get it back because it's in the US. Then another £600 for the preview. So that's $1,000. That's $1,000 for one preview, right? And you're just like, well, how much must people be spending on PR? And now, I can't financially do that. I just cannot. I can't. It's just not feasible. I'm a physics teacher. So like I told you, so I'm not made of money. So I've had to come up with ingenious ways to deal with that. And if you want to send it to the US, you want to send it to I'm not going to mention them actually, but they've got enough PR. We don't need any more for them. But if you want to send it to any of the big boys in America, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And I can imagine that these big companies are spending at least $10,000 on PR, maybe more. And so the average, single bloke who's got a board game, who wants to put it out there and he's done everything. Well, first of all, you have to take it much further than you ever did before. When Kickstarter started, I could have come with just an idea. Just a couple of pictures of ideas, frankly, a little bit of artwork from the artist, and people would have backed it and gone, yeah, we love what you're thinking of doing, get it done. Now you have to come with my game's complete. There's nothing new that needs to be added to the game. There are things that I'm doing, and that's where the solo mode comes in. I'm working on a solo mode at the moment. And I think that if I come back to Kickstarter, I'll do a very cheap Kickstarter with solo mode and a couple of more factions and a bit of an expansion, which I'd like to do. But the banners on Facebook, the companies that are going across the board, just, and now the requirement, the cost of the artwork that I've had to produce, all the different hats that I've had to wear to try and get to the stage that I'm at now, it's probably unfeasible for a lot of people. And that's why Kickstarter's filled with big companies, mostly. You still get the first timers doing a phenomenal job. But mostly, if you're not backed by serious finances, it's very hard. It's very, very hard.
I think what you see now is and you get companies like, say, Alley Cat Games doing it. That they'll see a Kickstarter idea, and what they'll do is they'll end up putting out a game which they haven't designed themselves, but they're putting out through their almost like their Kickstarter account because they've got the backing and everything behind it. And yeah, I mean, I agree with your points. It's like I've said this countless times before. I cannot look at before I could look at maybe 10 Kickstarter campaigns and have a really, really good idea of what potentially could be funded and what's going to kind of do well. And nowadays, I reckon it's more and more to do with what you've done on the ground, because I'm not entirely convinced social media is a amazing way forward. I've said this a few times now. I've seen people running spectacularly loud social media campaigns constantly on Facebook, and I've seen them really struggle on Kickstarter, where I've, Solar Storm, Brand of Games, they just did they did a huge phenomenal amount of money.
The cooperative game.
Yeah, they did a huge phenomenal amount of money on Kickstarter. But then I met them. They were at Aircon.
Yeah.
And I met them, and they were demoing every single day, non-stop, throughout the con. They'd gone down there, they'd invested whatever money to kind of stay down there for a couple of days, and they'd been demoing kind of non-stop from 10 o'clock in the morning until 6 or 7 or whoever.
They're
was there
phenomenally hard working. I saw them at UKGE. They're phenomenally hard working guys, and they deserve.
Yeah, they
deserve the success. But they must have still spent a lot of money, because they've had to have stands at all these places. All the stands themselves, forget anything else. The stand's going to cost them £300-400, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to UKG and they had a decent stand in the main hall, back left, fine. It wasn't like central or whatever, but they must have spent a few £100 doing that, and then they have to dress it up, so that's going to cost them another few £100. Like, they had advertising all over social media. I saw their advertising campaign, and they've had to work hard and spend a lot of money, and that's the reality. And then they have, they've been paid back for it. If you need money to make money, they say sometimes, and I feel like they've done everything that they possibly could on a budget. And if anyone, and when I've spoken to them, asked them to have a look at my Kickstarter and stuff. First of all, they're just decent people. They were prepared. The main guy who I can't remember his name, met him on the group, but the main guy who made the game came and had a look, and he gave me some feedback, useful, very constructive, nothing personal, feedback, and they're just decent. Wish me luck, and I think that they've done as good as you possibly can on a budget, on a reasonable, semi-affordable budget, through hard work, tireless hard work, and having a decent game. They've got a decent game. So if I could emulate their success, that would be really great. Really, really great. And but to be honest with you, PR is not my thing. It's not. I know I'm not the best person at PR. It's very difficult to wear every hat. I build the Kickstarter. You edit the stuff. You build the game. You do the math. You look at the art. You manage the project. You do the production. I'm in contact with China all the time, working through production. And like I said, Kickstarter humbles you, because the demand of the people is so great now that you either deal with the demand or they will cutthroatly ignore you. And I feel like I've leveled up everything in this attempt. And anyone can freely go and have a look at what it's done, because I just put out the preview links everywhere. But I've leveled up everything I possibly can, physically viably can, to try and entice people to be part of the campaign. And I've engaged, exactly like you said, I've tried to engage the people a lot more, which was a mistake that I didn't do. I just thought it would stand on its own merits, and that was quite naive of me, to be honest.
What's the price of entry? How much is it going to be to get in the door? Say I want to take part in the wars.
Yeah, Vector Wars.
How much green has to be seen before I get into the scene?
So it's for the core set, and when I say core set, the expansions are free. So when I mean core set, because there's a deluxe set. So the core set is £32, which I felt was pretty good value for money. £32. The delivery to the UK is not massively expensive. I think it's £7 or £8. That's about it, really. So you could probably get the whole lot for under £40. If you buy, I've got a bulk buy. If you buy 6, I think you get it for £2 cheaper per copy. So you get it for £30, but it goes to one delivery address. Okay. And then there's a deluxe version, which is £60. But you're getting some cool stuff in there, really cool stuff. You get cool stuff in the core set, actually. Originally, this is another thing, all the stretch goals that I had in the first campaign, I completely wiped them out and made them part of the game, and developed a whole load more stretch goals, so that I've taken, like I said, I leveled up. So the dice, the dice was a stretch goal. They're part of them. The expansions were a stretch goal. They're just coming in. Core set, everything. You're just getting the lot now.
So if I was asking you kind of why would you back the game? What would you say if you like certain things? What would make somebody like it? If they're into certain mechanics, why would they consider kind of going and backing Vector Wars?
it's just fun. Like, it's so much fun to play the game. Like, why do we play any board games? It's fun. Like, it's super fun to play this game, and you're going to get an experience. There are different type of gamers, okay? So if you're a gamer, first of all, you need to like two-player games. If you don't like two-player games, don't back the game, right? I can't help you with that one. It's not something I can fix. Like, in the future, this is another thing that I've been working on, which is a 2v2 version, but I never know whether that's going to see the light of day. Okay, it's complicated. There's lots of reasons for that. But so buy it for what it is now. That's what I would say. If you like two-player games, then this is about as good as it's going to get for a two-player game. I really think that it's not a CCG. It's not a living card game. It's not a collectible card game. You're getting everything in the box. Everything's there. If I bring out an expansion, it's going to be just more full sets that you will get. There's not going to ever be a CCG or anything of this. And you're going to have mechanisms put together that you've just never experienced. Not in this way. There is no game like it. There really isn't. I say that with quite a lot of confidence. I've played a lot of games. I'm one of you. I'm one of the board gamers, right? Playing every week a different game almost. And I can tell you I've never seen anything like it. There's the main reason that anyone would want to buy this game, if you're someone who has a lot of board games, it's because it's a new experience. If you don't have a lot of board games, but you like Magic the Gathering, you like Netrunner, and you like that, then you need to know that this is probably one of the best synergistic big play games that you're ever going to get. If you want that moment where you're sitting there and then everything just comes together in some beautiful moment, then this is the game for you, because that's always what I loved in Magic, and it was just like building that moment that you're just going to completely destroy your opponent. And the thing is that because it's so well balanced, even though you've had that moment, there is every chance that they can get back into the game, and they do. And that's the horrible thing of it, right? They do get back into the game. So you're just like, what? Damn it! How did they do that? They had that thing, and I didn't notice, and it did this, and I was like, why? Should have thought about that. Do you know what? I've played 500 games myself, right? 500 games, I'm telling you. Like, last 2 years, I was just taking it regularly, different places, blind tests, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I'll just play it with my own friends. Like, I love the game myself, obviously. And I've played people that I've played for the first time, and they've beaten me. And I'm like, this is not acceptable, right? It's not acceptable, because I've played it so many times, and I've never let anybody win. That's just not my style. It's that competitive spirit in me. I can't help myself. And I'm just like, they've beaten me, and they've beaten me because they have put strategies and synergies that I'd never seen before. They did stuff with the game that I hadn't even calculated as a possibility. And so when I saw those happen for the first time, I was like, I just got done by some brilliant person I played with, came up with a genius idea, and they put it into action. And if your game does that, that's what it's all about.
What's good about this, Eli, is there's a lot of passion behind this. You hear, there's two ways that you can put out a project. You can put out a project because you believe commercially it's going to really do well, and which is why you're doing it. And then there's the other side, which is now a case of like someone like yourself, which there's so much passion behind the project. You can tell that you've lived, ate, and slept this game, for however long, that you're is really kind of like this needs to be a thing. There's going to be something dreadfully wrong with the universe if this doesn't kind of get out there, which is kind of encouraging to kind of hear, basically, and I hope it comes across when people listen. When people have listened along, and if they do want to keep an eye on you, the game, and everything like that, where do you exist on the internet webs?
So you can find us on Facebook. We're developing a website for Meeple City Games because I've had to set up effectively a production company to allow for Vector Wars to exist. I didn't really want to go to other publishers because they would have just gutted the project out. I did try, actually. I went to Sinister Fish. It's an interesting story. I went to Sinister Fish with the game, and they really liked it. They said it's a good game. It seems really solid. They thought it was a good game, but it's not in their remit of games that they take. They don't publish this style of game, so they said thanks, but no thanks. So after that, I was like, and they said to me, one thing really got to me. They said, I hope you haven't spent a lot of money on the artwork because we would completely start over. And I was like, well, if you want to bring a game out the way you want to bring it out, then you cannot just take it to a publisher. Now, I do want to take games in the future to publishers, but But for this particular one, as you've said, it's something that I've done. It's been lived, eaten, breathed for a little while, and I feel like this is a reflection of what I believe is a good game, and this brings a whole load of life experience together to make Vector Wars. So. If they want to find us, they can find us currently on the Facebook, and I'm really good at getting back to people. So if anyone has any issues or has problems, then they'll be able to contact us there. We have got an email address, and when if there's any issues with the game, or when some pieces are missing or whatever, I don't know why that would happen, but if it does, there's always like a percentage. Then they'll have an opportunity to contact us at that point as well. But for now, it's just the Facebook.
Excellent. Well, what I'll do is I'll make sure that the Kickstarter will be live when this goes out, so we'll make sure that goes in the show notes so that we have got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards, and you shall find us in various worn-out places, worn-out faces, bright and early for the daily races like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and we've got our website and we've got our blog, which is like a blogspot type thing. And, everywhere, basically, like some kind of familiar face that turns up, but then you realise it's like, it's that familiar face that's turned up, but we're kind of everywhere, like kind of plain yogurt in Asda, which people know exists, but not everybody buys, that kind of thing. If you like what you've listened to tonight, then tell somebody else. Probably not about the yogurt, but definitely tell them about the podcast. And if you like us even more, consider giving us a rating, a review, or a subscription on the Apple podcast. If you are going to be giving us a rating, or review, or subscription, please do not give us 10 stars, because it doth make my head too big. And at the same time, don't give us 1 star, because I'm ugly enough, and me crying, it's like Dawson. Imagine Dawson, but he's then rubbed his face with a cheese grater. It's that kind of crying. It's not good at all. But give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's kind of average, and we're just a little bit average. But
not a bit of mediocrity, do you?
I definitely believe in mediocrity, which is why I had you on. But the person who's not been average tonight is a rather wonderful, rather fantastic. I give you Eli Mamane. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on. I appreciate your
Thank you for
time.
having me. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Eli?
No, we're not wizards.
Fantastic. And the second thing is to say goodbye.
Bye.
So it's a goodbye. It's a goodbye from Eli. Say goodbye, Eli. Don't jump in.
Oh, sorry.
Don't ruin it at the very end. Don't jump. Don't. Right, I'm going to say, okay, here we go. Say goodbye, Eli.
Bye.
And it's a goodbye. You got there in the end. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, and check out Vector Wars, because if it is triple triad, just like Final Fantasy, then I am going to be like so happy. But if it's not, I'm not going to be happy at all. But the only way to find out is jump on a Kickstarter and see if it is like that. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.